All right, let's go back to our lecture. So we talked about the sensory, and then the next one is to the motor. And just before we move on to the motor, let's very quickly summarize what is the sensory. So in these slides, we summarize all these sensory. So basically, we talk about the somatic sensory, auditory, vision, olfactory, and the taste. So right, so that's that. And then we talk about, so what do we need to know is that what kind of receptor is it? They are mechanoreceptor, hearing will be the mechano again, vision will be the photoreceptor right here, and smelling is olfactory cell, they are chemoreceptor, and taste will be the uh, in the taste buds, these are also chemoreceptor. You also need to know what cranial nerve transmit a signal. And so the location of this receptor are this organ in the nasal, in the smelling is in the nasal, vision is in the retina, hearing is the cochlea, touch is in the skin, taste in the taste buds, and in the oral cavity, basically. And you need to know that for the touch, somatic sensory, it goes through the spinal cord, but for the other, they are part of the cranial nerve system, cranial nerve sensory. So you need to know their cranial nerve. Cranial nerve 1 for the smelling, cranial nerve 2 for the vision, cranial nerve 8 for the hearing, cranial nerve 7, 9, and 10 for the taste. So that's that. And we also talk about the cortical region to process their signal. So that is a good summary about the sensory. And then the next one would be motor. So what you need to know about the motor is that motor nerve are another group of neurons. And what they do is that they are the function to control muscle. Our body has three types of the muscle. We have the skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and the hard muscle. There are three types. Why do we have three types? It's because that skeletal muscle are the muscle that you can voluntarily control. So that is different from the smooth muscle and the hard muscle. You cannot voluntarily control your smooth muscle and the hard muscle. Hard muscle and smooth muscle are controlled by autonomic nervous system. It's still nerve, but it's not branch. So with this one, we will talk about the skeletal muscle that you can voluntarily control. So that's a motor system that we are going to talk about right now. So this one show you a simple version of this motor control. As you can imagine that motor control can be quite complicated. Do you watch sports? If you watch sports, you probably know that those basketball player or soccer player, they can do a lot of very amazing motor movement. And so those motor movement are voluntary motor control, right? And so that can be, but in a simple, very simple version would be something, all this voluntary control come from your brain. So you have the brain motor, we call them upper motor neuron. They will send signal into the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, they will act on lower motor neuron. And then lower motor neuron, this neural body, this is axon. Axon is very long to end at your muscle. So this is the motor nervous system. It has the upper motor neuron in the brain. It doesn't talk to muscle directly, it talks to neuron. So this is part of central nervous system. And then you have the peripheral. It will, portion of those are in the central, but it will extend the central to the peripheral, leaving the spinal cord to the muscle, to the peripheral. They talk to muscle. So that is the lower motor neuron. And so we have the two new name, right? Lower motor neuron, upper motor neuron. So again, when we learn about any new name, we think about location and the function. So where are they? Upper motor neuron are in the brain. Lower motor neuron are in the spinal cord. Be more specific is that in the ventral horn of the spinal cord. So this is spinal cord, this is the back, this is the front. Back, you have dorsal, those are sensory. This one we just talked about. Sensory neurons are here, is in the dorsal root of the spinal cord. So this is a root, is extending out. This is the horn, this is a horn, right? So this is the ventral horn of the spinal cord. Ventral horn of the spinal cord hosts the neuron, the soma, the cell body of lower motor neuron. So that's the location. And what's their function? Their function is to excite the muscle. So they will, when the nerve coming down here, excite this lower motor neuron, it will generate action potential. Action potential travel down to the axonal terminal. It will reach the synapse to talk to a muscle cell. So that is that. This one just show you another picture to specify the location of lower motor neuron is in the ventral horn of the spinal cord. I write it down here. Ventral horn of the spinal cord. And as for the sensory, it's right here in the dorsal root of the spinal cord. So you're gonna see this in the quiz question. Where is the cell body of the sensory neuron, somatic sensory neuron? Where is the cell body of lower motor neuron? You have the ventral horn, dorsal horn, ventral root, dorsal root. And so I have 4 options, and basically that the sensory is in the dorsal root. The motor is in the ventral horn. So it's quite important, but it's not that difficult. General concept is that in the back are more sensory, in the front is more motor, right? So that's that. Now, when they send to the muscle here, send to the muscle here, muscle, it's gonna end at muscle cells. Here they form synapse because cell, they don't touch each other directly. They communicate through synapse. They communicate through chemicals. Action potential only travel along the axon, but they reach to the end. They don't jump over. They will cause these nerve end to release neurotransmitter. So that's that. So the next thing we are going to look at is this synapse area for motor control. So here, just show you another way to look at it is that here is the lower motor neuron. Where is it? It's in the ventral horn of the spinal cord. Right here. I write it again, man. So don't forget a ventral horn of spinal cord. All right. And so each nerve has multiple axon terminal. Each terminal will excite a muscle cell. And so when you send action potential to the end, it will excite a group of muscle cells. We call these group, we call them a motor unit. So the motor unit can be large, that one action potential excite a lot of muscle. With that one, you generate a large force. However, you don't generate fine movement. For fine movement, you will have the nerve only innervate, only excite a few muscle cells. So you can have fine movement. You can control group muscle to get excited, group muscle to move, but not the other group muscle. So you have fine movement. And so you can have a large force by have the system to innervate a lot of muscle, or like in your finger, you will have fine movement. And so in the finger, the setup in your finger, you have a lower group, a smaller group of the motor units. So this is a motor unit. One motor neuron controls several skeletal muscle cells. And so let's look at the synapse. I think that's the next slide. Right, that's the next slide. So these synapse, here is the motor neuron, axon terminal right here, and this part is the muscle. So in this lecture, we are not going to talk about muscle yet, but we are going to talk about muscle in the next lecture. However, with this lecture, we see how motor neurons interact with the muscle cells. So this is how they interact. The nerve have nerve ending, muscle right here. They don't touch. They have a synaptic cliff. This is synapse. And so the way they do it is that the way they communicate is that the nerve end will release neurotransmitter. And in these, particularly in the lower motor neuron and the skeletal muscle, this synapse, we call it neuromuscular junction. We only apply these for skeletal muscle. We don't apply this for smooth muscle or cardiomyocytes control. No, we only talk about this. It's because that neuromuscular junction refer to a very fine control of our skeletal muscle. We have the boundary control. They are fine movement. So this nerve, even though they don't touch, they kind of like innervate. They answer into a little part, little pocket formed by the skeletal muscle. So that's that. So these whole thing are skeletal muscle can be very big, right? Look at your arm, the string, the entire muscle organ. So this is the string, from bone to bone. That fiber is one single muscle fiber. So that is very long and large. And so the nerve will innervate here. And this is the synapse. We call this neuromuscular junction. So what do you need to know about this neuromuscular junction? First, you know that it's a synapse, so it releases neurotransmitter. So the question is, what type of the neurotransmitter serve the neuromuscular junction? The answer is this neurotransmitter is called acetylcholine, right here. Acetylcholine. So this is the neurotransmitter released from the lower motor neuron terminal, acts on the muscle. And in the muscle, it has the receptor right here, this receptor. It has a name. This receptor is called nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. Just by name, you know it's related to nicotine. So nicotine actually can bind on it, also excited. But the effects of nicotine, cigarette smoking, has more effects, has a stronger effects into your brain, not your muscle. And so, but in the brain, we also have the same receptor. That's why the nicotine can affect your neural function, basically increase your arousal, increase your alertness. It's because that they act on the same receptor in the brain. All right. So in the neuromuscular junction, we have this receptor in the muscle. These receptors are called nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. And this is the beginning. We are going to talk about the muscle, skeletal muscle. So how do you excite the skeletal muscle? You excite skeletal muscle by motor neuron, right? How do you excite your muscle? Your muscle has to be, they only listen to one boss, and their boss is motor neuron. How does motor neuron tell muscle to do the work? They release neurotransmitter. What's the neurotransmitter? Acetylcholine. How does acetylcholine tell the motor neuron? They bind on these receptor, nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. All right. Now, when the motor cells, this is the first time we talk about the motor cells, muscle cells. What's the unique part of about the muscle cells is that muscle cells are also excitable cells. So this is, I like this setup, this arrangement that we talk about the cell we talk about the memory potential, action potential, then we bring these two primary excitable cells. They are neuronal cells and they are muscle cells. So muscle cells are also excitable cells. Then how do you, so just like every excitable cell, they generate action potential. So this is the beginning of the action potential. This receptor is an ligand-gated ion channel. We talk about ligand-gated ion channel, right? You remember it, right? Let me stop sharing. Let me open another slide and our membrane protein, and you will remember what we talked about. So give me a second. All right, so I just opened our earlier lecture, and I just want to show you here membrane protein. So here is what we talk about, the membrane protein. Here is the ion channel. I think we talked about the ion channel. Here, protein synthesis. Yeah. Here is the ion channel. Here. Ion channel, we have 4 types. We have ligand gated, mechanical gated. This is kind of like sensory, always open, voltage gated, right? So these are the ion channel. And nicotinic acetylcholine receptor are a type of ligand gated ion channel. So they will open, allow ion to go through. In this case, it's sodium. So that's the same, just same thing for our nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. So let me share back to our, let me share the current slides here. So that's this one here. So this is a ligand-gated ion channel. It opens ion channel. It opens sodium channel. And because when it opens, ion will diffuse. And it will diffuse from high concentration to low concentration. And here is extracellular space. This is intracellular space. Which space has more sodium? It's extracellular. So sodium diffuse in. Sodium bring positive charge ion. It will cause depolarization, make the membrane potential to be positive. So that is this one here. So this is how muscle generate action potential. In the resting, if there's no ligand binds on it, the membrane potential is negative. But when ligands, when acetylcholine binds on it, sodium channel open, it will bring the membrane potential. Sodium's flowing, sodiums are positive. It will make the membrane potential to be positive, and it will trigger the action potential. So that's how you excite the muscle cells. And then muscle will get excited, muscle will contrast, muscle will move. So that is how our motor neuron control your muscle. So here, a good review of our action potential. You have to stimulate it above the threshold. Then you have the depolarization. This is the depolarization. Depolarization is contributed by voltage-gated sodium channel to open. Then you have the repolarization, which is contributed by voltage-gated potassium channel to open, and the potassium leak will cause repolarization, and then plateau, resting membrane potential. So that is how our lower motor neuron control the muscle. And this one summarizes the motor nervous system. And so that is it. The next one, we are going to talk about the autonomic nervous system. But let's take a break, and then we come back for the autonomic nervous system.